All right. Hello, everyone. This is Prajol, and we are mightily challenged by technology today. It's the last day. The important stuff is it's the last day of a very successful show, Light Upon Light, which features the work of Abdullah Syed, who, when we started to conceive the show, was in Karachi, and actually we did an Icon IG Live with him, but now is in Australia. And there it's 3 in the morning. So firstly, thanks a lot, Abdullah, for being up so early or staying up so late. Which is it? Are you up late or up early?
I haven't had a chance to sleep at all. It's only like 30 minutes sleep, so I'm up.
But you are up. Have you had a cup of tea or a cup of coffee?
No, if I do that, then I won't be able to sleep. Then, so after this, I'm going to straight to bed.
Okay, so then you are up late with a little bit of a nap in the middle.
Yeah, try.
Thank you so much. So listen, let's start because this is kind of pandemic and it's the time, this has also played a big part in the show. We'll start with the words, and you sent us because you actually got caught in the lockdown. So you went from Australia to Pakistan for what would have been a much briefer visit, but you ended up being there for a long time. Is that correct? Tell us about it.
Yes, I went there in February because prior to that, my mother passed away 3 months ago. And
So sorry.
My family didn't have time to mourn. So we all went back in February, where also I had a solo show there. But then lockdown happened and I actually got stranded there for 10 months. I only got back in Australia at the end of November.
Right. And while you were stranded, you did these really amazing works, which is what Lena is showing right now. And actually, you can see what we are doing. Is Lena is showing this to our IG Live folks that are on the live. You did these amazing works. Now, I have observed and seen you work with this weaving of different currency bills. It's a very elegant and a clever idea and a very intelligent way to juxtapose often very differing political systems, different countries that are often at loggerheads, at war with each other. You kind of take their currencies and weave them together. But thus far you were quite respectful of geometry. And this time, for the first time, if we can go to that side, you have started to do work where the bills don't necessarily overlap or coincide, but actually the pictures come together to make some sense. And just so you know, this is what, I will turn this. This is what Lena is showing everyone right now. So this is a Chinese yuan and an American dollar. Tell us about it.
So the first work that you shown earlier, it's called the weaving reality, and it's 2 banknotes are woven together to form a new banknote. And the one that you were just asking me to talk about, the Chinese RMB and the USA dollar, is called overlapping reality. So there are 2 different methodologies. One actually has literally a woven. Just like how you weave textiles together with weft and wove, the vertical and horizontal, whereas the other one is only the vertical line that actually comes from one banknote and literally overlaps the other one. The primary idea actually came from my fascination with, quite interesting, from Star Trek. The Star Trek, and as well as this scientific notion which is called warping the space. So for example, if you take, I'm actually very fascinated by the ideas of distances as well. And I was thinking about this, my proximity to, for example, Pakistan, Australia, USA. That's where I've lived. My parents are there, and I was constantly thinking about this travel time that I've spent with work and traveling. And I always wondered that why do I have to take these 15 hours flights? There's so much time I'm spending on aircraft. And then I also realized that what is happening with the world right now is that with the news and social media, is that we get images and we get news instantly. It's almost like that we are in someone else's backyard. So that is exactly was the thought in my mind when I thought that the Chinese Capitol building and as well as the American Capitol building, what if they are actually across each other? And it's very similar to how a space is being warped from one point to the other. So if you would actually have a piece of paper and you should draw a circle here and circle here, you literally just warp them, and then the distance is just merged together. So that was the primary idea, is that what if the two images are merged on top of each other, because there's a constant dialogue, is that who is the leader right now, who is the superpower. So I actually created a new building, just like what I've been doing with my different type of uniforms. I'm actually creating a new structure where the Chinese capitalist building and the American Capitol building are joined together to form a new structure, a new economy, and a new political system.
Great. Great. That's an amazing explanation. Thank you so much for it. One question that comes to mind is, how do you pick these countries? So, for instance, I don't believe I've seen you do this with the Australian dollar. Do you read up? Is there something that I've seen you do it with Pakistan, of course, with the Indian rupee, with the Chinese yuan, with the American dollar, with the British pound, I think I have seen also. But there are some, like, given the fact that you live and work in Australia a lot, I don't believe I've seen the Australian dollar.
For the overlapping reality one, I was able to use Australian dollar, and I'm actually working on that, and I have exhibited a piece earlier. But the problem with the Australian dollar is that I am unable to cut that, because first of all, it's plastic, it's polymer banknote, and I actually don't like the tactility of it. And the second thing is that at this point, Australia is the only country where legally, constitutionally, not as such constitutionally, but legally, they also stipulate that you can't damage the banknote for even art purposes, and it's being absolutely verbalized. So I am very mindful about it, but the way that I did with the overlapping one is that the Australian dollar bill is actually intact, and the other currency is being cut and then overlapped. So I'm actually finding different strategies as well to use them. And most of these bills that I'm using, it's not that I like them or whatever. It's just that I feel that they have a connection with each other, and these are the countries that are constantly geographically and as well as politically at the forefront of what is happening in the world. So I'm susceptible to that, and that's what always weave into my idea, and I can't escape from it. So I really enjoy these, and most of these countries I have traveled and I have experienced what is happening there. So I find an affinity to these, and I really enjoy them putting them together.
Thanks. So for those of you who are joining us now, because I know some people are still coming in, we are doing the Aicon Contemporary Dialogue. We are doing our IG Live show. We are somewhat technically challenged today for reasons we don't quite understand, but we are talking to Abdullah Syed, who is in Sydney, where it's 3:15 in the morning, so it's quite late, and he stayed up for us to be talking, because this is the last day of his show Light Upon Light, which has been a great success, and we are delighted. We will take you through. Right now we are talking about his working with bills, and this formed the starting point of the show, which he has worked with currencies forever, but we are now talking about a different modality, not just weaving, but actually splicing them, if you will, vertically or in other ways to achieve a visual effect. We will also then talk about moneyscapes, which are these beautiful vitrines that were in the show and both of them are going to great collections. And then finally, we will end the conversation with the work Noor Un Ala Noor, Light Upon Light, which gives its name to the show, but that will come at the end. And again, apologies about the technical difficulties, but let's move on to one more of these note interposing works where this is another bill that we've had a lot of good reception on, Abdullah, where it is the Pakistani and the Chinese bill. If you'd like to talk a little bit about it, and
I think he knows which short time.
This is the one.
Yes. So again, it's an overlap bill, and as you know, that there are a lot of things happening in Pakistan related to China. China is actually constructing a lot of things in Pakistan, building a lot of things in Pakistan. So, and then we have the sea. There are a lot of stuff is happening, and then there always a discussion who is behind it, who is the leader, who is speaking, and who is looking. So it was in my mind, and I just simply overlapped those two images. And very interesting fact is that if you would look at how the banknotes are being printed these days, they are becoming very similar. For example, each figure is actually exactly the same size, and I find this very monotonous now. The banknotes have no creativity, in my opinion, these days. I mean, they are beautiful, whatever, but they are actually following a very simple structure. And when I overlap them, they
Just pan it back on me.
Sure.
Hi, Abdullah. We're just coming back to you. You may have paused. In case you paused, can you come back? So, folks, we are having all manner of technical difficulties today doing the IG Live, and one piece of that is that we just lost contact with Abdullah, but I'm going to try to reset that up right now. Hopefully we'll find him. Hey Abdullah, sorry about that. Okay, you're back on Lena's. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that was the idea behind it, is just an overlapping, and I think it is also actually going back to this drawing activity that is actually very common, where you actually fold the paper in different segments and ask different people to draw one portrait, and then when you open up, you'll be very surprised how they are misaligned. And I think I'm actually doing the reverse, where I'm actually trying to align things together, and I think this alignment is actually quite revealing in terms of how our political system and economical system actually working these days, and how they are overlapping. So it doesn't matter whether you are in democracy or whether you are in China, it's socialist. They all are working within a certain invisible structure. So I'm just making those structure a little bit more visible, a little bit more at front, that so you can actually recognize it and probably take the conversation further from that.
So in this case, if you want to get a little closer, Mao and Jinnah's faces are amazingly aligned, but especially the mouth. The mouth, you have taken great care to, it's almost as if the same human being.
They always talk about who is speaking. So if you would, for example, if you take Orientalism, that Edward Said is also talk about is that the person who is in power actually has the voice. So I always question this idea that who is the leader, who is speaking, who is behind that, and I'm not taking away Jinnah's autonomy here, but I'm actually talking about what is happening within the capitalist and as well as the political system. Is that and Jinnah's word are potentially being robbed these days, and he's being it's a political problem, it's a political issue, and I think people in Pakistan are recognizing some of these things. But it's not just Pakistan; it's actually every other country who is not being superpower. I feel that they always are under some influence from another country, whether it's China or America or previously UK. The entire aspect of colonization is actually right in front of us if you want to study.
Okay, great. So I think we want to. That's great. I mean, it's a wonderfully tight creation, and actually, if you see, Lena is still kind of holding that up, so people on the IG Live are seeing that the bill still. But let us, in the interest of time, move, and we are now going to the two vitrine works. And I will show you which one we are starting with. We are starting with the one which is mostly dollar bills. And Lena, you can actually stay focused on that. If you want to tell us a little bit about this work, Abdullah, yeah, go for it. Start.
So this particular one that you're talking about with the horse riders am I right? The horse riders are...
Correct. Camel rider, horse rider, yes.
Yeah, so this work is called Playground of Alternative Realities. And again, it goes back to this idea of stereotyping Muslim male in Islamic world, and how it goes back to 9/11, even pre 9/11, that they always a representation of, for example, that countries such as the Middle East or whatever, they can't take care of themselves. Some Lawrence Arabia has to come to these countries to rescue them. So I was just thinking about what would happen if the narrative is actually the other way around. What would happen if these horseback riders who are actually riding freely in the capital in America and on the streets of Washington and all that. And funny thing is that I'm actually now segue this into what happened right now in America on the 6th of January. That how there was an attack on the Capitol building. So when I was looking at it, I was actually thinking about this work, and I find it quite interesting that despite the fact that if you look closely, all of these horse riders, they are actually not roaming around for terrorizing. They're actually part of different types of games. They are actually come from Afghani money. They come from different Muslim country banknotes, and most of these are representation of some type of game. For example, in Afghanistan, in Afghani money and other, there's a game called Bushkashi. So some of these riders are actually playing that. At the same time, if you look in the middle of this diorama, you will see there are kids actually who are playing glass marbles. So basically, they are playing. They are not terrorizing in any way. They are not being. They are not dangerous, but it's just that how the media has portrayed them. If you would see someone like that on a horse ride with their weapon, then you would immediately consider them as someone who is a menace. But whereas other people who can bring their own weapon, but then because there is a constitution, they have a constitution right to bear a weapon, then they are not being called the same way as being, so you would call someone from Middle East. So I find these overlapping very interesting and very enjoyable actually. It's a very enjoyable piece, but very difficult to make, to be very honest. And I'm actually trying to put together some posts after this, so you can see that how meticulous and the amount of the pieces, that was so many small pieces involved in it, that it's a huge puzzle to solve, but it was very enjoyable for me to make.
Great. And we because we are on this subject, I would encourage you to come back to this language, because I think we could, these were, even people who came, and mind you, in a pandemic, everything is slower. We have not had a lot of foot traffic. But what I liked about this work is it spoke to younger people, because it also has an element of of a little city or a little 3D model, architecture model, that sort of thing. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera. Lena has already been on this for a while, so we are now looking at the second moneyscape work, and tell us a little about it.
Okay, so this piece is called tenemus, and the word tenemus is actually a present or a space that is destined or being designated for king or for God. So any religious structure and whichever the space they are in is actually called tenemus. So I was actually thinking about that, how these structures, whether structure who are part of these banknotes. I mean, any country that you will see, they always either a spiritual structure or religious structure is part of it. So that's where the divine economy idea comes in play. But what surprised me the most is that the amount of Islamic, for example, Islamic countries, they have Islamic structure, and there are some repetition as well. Whereas in the West, there are a lot of Catholic and Protestant church and other religious figures are part of that. So I just want to put them together to create this present that where all these are just miles apart or are just apart, and they are creating a harmony within that, and there is no conflict that, whereas today there's a lot of conflict related to these structures, and someone holy site is someone else previous holy sites, and I think all of these issues are constant part of our political system and economical system as well, because they also involve money in that regard. So I just want to combine them together to see what happens, and the result is in front of you.
Great. So we will now again, to keep it moving, we just saw the two vitrines, the two moneyscapes, and Abdullah spoke about it. So folks, we are doing this technologically challenged and challenging Instagram Live today. We are talking to Abdullah on WhatsApp video whilst Lena and I are here in New York. He's in Sydney. And we are bouncing a signal from Sydney to New York, and I know that some of you are tuning in from Pakistan, so it's going all the way back, so this is very interesting. But we are now going to go to the last and the largest work in the show, and I'm going to actually step away, or maybe we have just a minute to focus on these works. And Abdullah, this is now, we are looking, we have the maps of Syria and Saudi Arabia, and if you want to talk about this, and Lena can focus on them. And
sure. This body of work is called mapping investment, and I think it connects with the diorama that I just spoke about quite nicely. It's again, how the war or terrorism decimated lands across Middle East, and I feel that the map generally, that if you would ask a child to draw a map, they always do an outline. You actually don't recognize what is happening inside, and I think this is how actually we see these wars as well. There is only an outline, and we know there's something happening inside, but we don't know what is happening, how their structures, how they become soft target. So I want to use that idea and then cut pieces from it to create a map that actually solidify today's situation, but at the same time create this very fragile mapping that can break any time. But what is interesting about these structure is that they actually have quite a bit of strength, and I think this is what I talked about, is that no matter how much you destroy or flatten these lands, I think people will actually rise up and they will actually recreate this beautiful land again.
Okay, beautiful. And now Lena is walking, and you can see her walking, so you know what folks on the show are seeing. And so we are in the space, and Lena is actually going around it if you want to start talking about the work. Abdullah, over to you.
So this piece is called Noor Light, and this is actually a full moon. I always wanted to make a full moon after creating these works called Aura works, which were actually when they were giving relates to the Islamic structures, especially the mosque. Although the work that we have seen earlier and this work, they may look different, but I think if you would go back what I was talking about earlier, that how you can connect 2 points together, how they are overlapping happening in my work. So this overlapping I actually call the balancing act. So there's always a balancing act happening in my work. So if I'm talking about an outward economy, then I have to talk about internal or esoteric or personal economy as well. And for me, the personal economy is my spiritual aspect of it, or love and empathy. And to me, again, the distances that I was talking about, I actually measure distances with moon and the sun, because if I'm here, I see the same moon as anyone else anywhere in the world, and I get the light from the same sun. So to me, the moon becomes quite an interesting parable, because it's also talk about the divine, it talk about the unity, and it's talk about this beautiful light that we all bathe in. And as someone who practices Islam, as someone who pray, the caps are quite a beautiful symbol, because the caps are actually done the same Islamic pattern that earlier the word that I was talking about, the structure are done the same way. So here the caps are actually stitched together in a hexagonal format. Hexagon, as you know, in the beehive, actually again is a beautiful symbol. And I want to create this beautiful this beautiful moon that also has a reflective quality. There is actually water or a blue mirror underneath it, where you will actually sit, or if you will reflect yourself, then it's become very it's about interception. And on one way, it also brings the narcissism into it, which actually goes back to the ideas of our outward reality, which is all about making money, looking good. But if you will look closely, after a while you actually realize that is more empathic. The entire experience that you will have after this, it actually it balances you. It actually pushes you to balance your inward and outward realities. And I think this show actually put those two realities quite beautifully.
Thank you. And this was we're also on time. For those of you who were with us, I'm just going to hold this parallel to me. For those of you who joined us through this, thank you so much for bearing with all the technical difficulties. You were listening to Abdullah Syed, who is in Sydney, for whom it's 3:30 in the morning. We should let him go so that he can fall asleep. This is the last day of the show. I know a couple of you are in New York. If you can, please come and see the works, and thank you so much for joining. This whole show will be on our Instagram channel, archived there. So yes, thanks a lot, and Abdullah, thank you so much. Thanks for staying up.
Thank you.
No,
Shukriya. Bahut shukriya. Thank you.
Bye.
Shabba khair.
Bye.